Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's Alisha Braché here at Cosmic Gateway and New Earth Children, and I am joined with Katie Jane from Vibro Sound, and this is in partnership with World Unity Week. So, thank you, welcome, and thank you for joining us. This segment we're going to be dedicated to focus talking about um, hybrid children, new earth children, the various forms of unique pregnancies, conceptions, and births, and really looking at the interplanetary influences and aspects that are aligning with moving through this ascension process and how that happens in unique stories in different ways. So we'll be covering in the beginning, we're going to be talking about this topic from a wider perspective, sharing our own personal experiences. We'll also be sharing snippets of the work that we do going into sessions and accessing information which is given to us through our intuitive abilities and gifts and through the work of working with other people going through these journeys. And then finishing off with a guided process for people to either connect with their hybrid children or their spirit children, new earth children, whether they're directly related to you in a biological sense, or if you are just, caretakers and custodians. I truly believe that we all have an important role with this new generation coming through. So thank you, Katie, and welcome. Thank you for a very important conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see what information comes through, what comes through in our session, and what people can experience in your guided meditation process. I think definitely connecting with you has really opened the door through the process and through having sessions with you to be able to connect through your eyes and then to be able to connect on my own and realize that I do have the ability to access those dimensions and realms. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think um, maybe we'll go back from the very beginning. Obviously, we've both had very unique journeys that are still unfolding and intertwined in so many different ways. And I think what was very inspiring was the very first time I connected with you and what I could see through that session in your connection, the energetic connection, and your experience through different hybridization programs and hybrid children, and being able to have that conversation really opened up a lot to explore and a lot to share. And since then, this goes back a few years ago. I don't know how many now. Feels like I've known you for eternity, but on human, this time around, it's been a handful of years. But so much has been more has been understood and explored through interweaving of our own journey together and the work that we do together, and also the projects that will follow on from this and the school project and all the amazing stuff that is coming through because of these collaborations, but also what we see and work with clients and women in various ways who are going through this. So keep it, if this information is new to you, certainly keep an open mind, a loving heart, and pure intention. This is not easy to talk about, and our story is just a drop in the sea of consciousness that represents so many other women's stories that aren't prepared to come out and, just yet to share their experiences, because it takes a lot of bravery and a lot of courage for women to talk out about the changes that are happening to them, not only through their bodies, but interdimensionally, and the experiences that they have that would, to the average person, make you sound completely crazy. And I can understand why a lot of women do, want to stay silent about these things because of the ridicule and just the lack of understanding and consciousness of those around them that can't really hold space. Um, and I always go back into my mind. This journey started for me, at least consciously. I say at least consciously, at the end of 2015, which started with conscious contact with my star family and having those experiences, and then going through an interdimensional conception and holding light and frequency and pregnancy for a number of earth years. These processes for women aren't linear. They're very long drawn out, and it really understands and helps to to gain perspective around the fact that we aren't living in a linear in linear time and process. And I know for a lot of people in the spiritual community, that is a concept that's very hard to get your head around, and it takes a while to infiltrate this information, integrate, sorry, not infiltrate, integrate this information. But it's not until you're living and going through one of these experiences that it's truly embodied and understood from a very human way, which very confusing and conflicting to the human mind and how we've been programmed to believe and understand. So I think, I've been sharing this information openly and publicly since 2017, more 2018. And really the reason that I share this information is to help those women going through very terrifying experiences. And I know from my own experience, I didn't have resources or information or understanding. And I spent a lot of time researching and reaching out and trying to put context around what I was going through to make sure to understand that I wasn't going crazy, and that what I was going through and what my intuition was telling me was actually real. And I think that helps through validation of connecting with other people and hearing their stories and journeys, and knowing that not one is alike, but they do share common threads throughout them. Only to see that this is so much greater than just my journey. This is, as I said, a sea in the drop of consciousness of what's happening on this planet. And from the moment at the beginning of this journey, I realized that if I'm going through this, what does that mean for humanity? What does that mean for the planet and where we're heading? And truly, it should be taken with inspiration and upliftment that we are moving into a new world, into a new earth, a higher vibration where these things that perhaps seem impossible or unbelievable become, believable, possible, and are actually happening to people on this planet right now. So the reason that I share this information, as hard as it has been, I, coming out of my very dark night of the soul at the end of 2016 and still trying to put the pieces together to understand what was happening, I went to bed one night very angry and upset. And I said, why do I have to go through all of this? Because I, at that point, through my research, started to believe that I was going through fragments of different people's experiences that I could find. I researched hybrid children and realized that there was an aspect of that, but it wasn't my entire journey. I researched about light conception, interdimensional conception, or more commonly known as immaculate conception, only to find that there are many women that have gone through that, and realized that that was part of my own experience and journey. I researched into cryptic pregnancies and found, information about, longer gestation periods, realized that that was also an aspect that I was experiencing too. And also the contact that I've had and being taken up on ships and being operated on and worked on, and realizing that that was also an aspect of my journey too. I've had so many different experiences, from positive ET beings to ones that may not have the most positive agenda. And why is that happening to me too, And it was through my pure frustration and hopelessness that I cried out, like, what do you want me to do with this? Why do I have to go through all of this? And I woke up the next morning with a very clear message that I had to go through all of this to not only understand, but to live all the possibilities, and that I would start to be given more information so that I can share that and help other women. And from that, my purpose was ignited, and I started to write what started as my anonymous blog, because I no way did I want my name attached to this, because of the ridicule and shame and all the different human emotions that are attached to it, the craziness, the kookiness, the insane. And then as I started to share, more and more women started to contact me and share with me their experience, and I could feel an aspect of my own experience threaded through theirs. And I realized how vast this experience is and how well it's shared through women who are going through, life altering experiences on a daily basis that often they can't even share with their closest friends and family or partner. And so my work is really dedicated to supporting and assisting humanity in that way and supporting those women. So thank you, Katie. That's my sort of introduction. We'll
You're
go more into
amazing.
it. But let's talk about hybrids, because I know that that has been a lifelong journey for you, and you're still unpacking it, as we all are. But I would love for you to start off and share a little bit about your experience with the hybrid children.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I definitely want to honor the fact that I've seen you go through all of those different awakenings and dark nights, not all of them, but definitely watching the grace in which you transmute the understanding and hold the field for everyone else going through it. And I know that it really does take it out of you, and you have to process on a daily basis all of those emotions while still being Cosmic Gateway and holding the light and holding the truth. And in our last session together, understanding you must experience everything so then the new information can come through. So it's not just informing the information, it's the experience which then supports the truth to come through in a really grounded way. So thank you for all that you do. You're amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I feel like on a unconscious level I've known for my whole life. I remember my mum had a few miscarriages, and for some reason when I was little, I'm an only child, so when I was little I always knew that, it sounds so strange, I always knew my mum's genetics or like history we were a part of some program, and I would always have really weird dreams that would denote to that. I knew that there were others of me out there, and I think it really started to awaken one when we started to connect. I think our very first session, and you said that my womb was a portal for 3 different star systems, and you could see all of the energy flooding in, and I guess different codes would come in through that. I think that's more about my galactic cosmic soup DNA makeup. But I think also in having sessions with you, and the session that I had with Rebecca Rose actually just yesterday, I've always known that a part of me has put my hand up for this experience, because I do hold such human and other DNA strands. Actually, what came through yesterday, I shared with you yesterday, was that I put my hand up for this experience, and I wanted to take the brunt of it for a lot of other people because I could handle it and I knew what I was getting into on that soul level. I don't know fully to the extent of um, the numbers of, I guess, hybrid children or clones that have been made of those hybrid children. But what I do know is there's definitely a pure essence, light filled purpose behind most of it. And that's the aspect that I mainly feed into. My session with Joe in that BQH session, we went up and it was almost like a galactic airport portal opening station. And I remember all of the kids aspects of my hybrid children came through, and there's dragon beings and Arcturian beings and Pleiadian beings, and they were really, really interesting looking. And in sessions with you, you had mentioned that they would come in, be placed in my energy field, be attuned to the new earth frequencies, and then they would go out, which explains on a really human level. So I grew up with endometriosis, and I would always have really chronic womb pain. And I know that my mum had that as well. And an aspect of that is the lineage of sexual abuse that had been carried down in my cellular memory. So clearing that was one stage to it, but definitely having the sensation that I would feel all of these children in my field, they'd attune to me and then they'd leave. And I'd feel this sense that I was constantly being pregnant. So I felt like I was pregnant and then I wasn't pregnant. I'd look really 9 months pregnant and then it would go away. And I think the emotional response when I met those kids in that BQH session, and just my general love of children, was such a confirming experience when you feel it in your nervous system and you remember. And then on a darker timeline, also, I do know I woke up the very first ship experience. I woke up on a ship and I was laying on the table, and greys. There was a mantid being, and then greys in lab coats. There was a short one and two tall ones. And I felt very connected to the tall ones, but the short one made me feel very like, what am I doing here? And I remember I was strapped down and I got up, and I remember they were operating on my womb, and I got up and I was like, and they're like, you're not meant to be awake for this. You agreed to this, but you're not meant to be awake. And I was like, hell no, I'm out of here. And I was running, and all of these nurses were coming and being like, you need to lay down, you need to lay down. And I woke up, and it was such a real experience. I tried to explain it to people, and they're like, that's your subconscious telling you that you're fearing the future and la la la. But that's when I secretly just be quiet all the time. Like, I just definitely don't tell anyone what I know and what I experience. But feeling into that, I definitely think there is a darker agenda for how many hybrid and how much of my genetics I've given away. And I think over time, that's going to be a process of pulling that back through the music that I make and the sound frequencies that I create. But also, ultimately, I feel very fond of the experience.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And how long ago was that experience when you woke up on the table? Like, how old?
That was my very first maybe like 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Mm.
That was my very first real life experience. But before that, I was in all of my spare time, I was researching. I found like pages would just find me. I know that feeling when you're awake, and I would be on pages. And I remember reading, it was this like 90s retro purple and blue website, and it was talking about we do healings with ET beings, so they do psychic surgery on you. And I was fixated on psychic surgery, and I knew that I had to have a healing with the aliens, but I never actually had an experience. I just went straight from, and now I know who I am on a galactic level and what I'm capable of. I was never meant to experience that. I was doing that, and through learning with you now, I can understand what that means on a more grounded level. But 6 or 7 years ago, it really started that I was like, oh, this is real. And I think in this life, I've downloaded I think I really understand on a galactic level, and it's more about filtering the information through in a very grounded way. Because when I first started to awaken, I didn't eat, I didn't wear shoes, I didn't know what day it was. I was so open and not, because of my trauma as a child, not grounded.
Yeah.
So it's definitely been an opposite process of like, I know all this stuff, but how do I make it work as a human on this wild planet?
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think that that's something that a lot of us starseed, quote unquote, starseeds can identify with, is that, you know, we are often quite ungrounded. We're very tapped into, you know, the multidimensional realms, the cosmic realms. And I think a big part of the reason why we volunteered to come in and have these experiences is to be able to embody and ground a lot of those frequencies, those gifts and abilities in a very human way. And that can be
It's
really
hard.
really challenging. um, and so I really honor you for sharing that. And it's interesting when you go back, like, how old were you when you were aware of some of these things? Because I think,
4,
yeah, yeah,
5. I look back now and I have no memories of that age, but when I look back, I knew so much stuff.
mm.
And then obviously when my mum passed, that trauma kind of shut everything down, and that wasn't supported. But yeah, we fully know.
And I think that's a very much a big part of piecing your journey together, is that you have this abrupt experience that completely upends your life, and you can no longer go back to living or thinking or being in the same way. And when you start to go back, and you know, the first time conscious contact happens, it is very, very confronting. Or at least, you know, I can say that honestly from my own experience. I was terrified, frozen in bed in fear, because I didn't understand why they were coming for me, what they wanted, what was happening. I was very unaware of that on a soul level, or on a human, on any level. I
When
was
was
just
your
going
first experience on a ship?
first conscious experience. It was 2015, but when so 6 years ago, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I think that the first time, and when you start to piece and it takes a lot of work of healing trauma associated with the unknown, um, childhood trauma. There's
Safety.
so many things that coincide with being able to fully integrate it into the human experience. But I think when you look back and you start to piece together your life, you start to realize that, first of all, these experiences aren't just happening now. They've always been happening. I just
Yeah.
haven't been aware of them. And
Mm.
second, what we experience when we dream are actually real experiences, and they're not always, but they're not our subconscious mind having a wild,
Yeah. It takes a
imagination.
long time to understand and trust.
Yeah. I think after, I always say this, but after I had my Kundalini awakening 2015, I realized that everything that I thought was my imagination, I realized was real, and that this 3D world is much more illusionary than the real reality that I have been coexisting in multiple spaces. And I just thought it was my vivid, wild imagination. And managing walking in multiple worlds at once is a real skill set and a real testament to self mastery. And I think that we chose to be here to have these experiences because
Mm.
we knew that we could. I think a lot of
Mm.
star seeds, haven't had a physical experience or a human experience, and that is where they can be really supported by old wise ones and wise souls that have had a lot of human experience, and being able to bridge that gap and work together. So
I will say before the galactic awakening, I do think that there was like a warm up for me. So like I think initially it began with when I was really sick in meditation, visiting the realms. And then in waking life, I remember I lived in Bangalore and the veil disappeared. So I saw the old man who lived in my space and he was dying, and his wife would walk around the house and the baby would walk around. And I think then I started to understand the Fae realm and started to see Fae and talk to them. And then I think for me, it was like a really gentle progression. And then when I got to the galactic stuff, I think that's when I had the dark night, big dark night of the soul, because I had to really sit with the fact that that's real. And I wonder how many people understand it on like a yeah level, but then the dark night, I feel like, is when you really say, oh shit, okay,
yeah,
what does this mean?
yeah. What does this mean? What I believed for most of my life has been a lie, and now I have to take what I didn't think was real as a real experience. And who does that make me now? What does that make me now?
And where does it end?
Mm,
My question was always like, so if that's that realm, it's like I don't have the map to the end of the road, so there is no end of the road. So I got overwhelmed with the vast expansiveness of it too, because you
mm,
can't, there's no, yeah.
mhm. But it's interesting that your childhood experiences go back to like 3 or 4. I think mine certainly started around that time. I have a lot of really vivid memories that I never spoke about, but as a child, I could never sleep. I was constant. It's so funny when you think back of these things and you see them in a different light. And I've had to do a lot of processing around that and realize that, there was a lot of things happening that I was not aware of for a very long time. Um,
Mm.
but I remember I used to sit up in my room. I probably would have been around 3 years old. And what I now know to be an out of body experience would start to happen, where I would hear vibrational sounds and the room would start to spin, and I would feel sort of out of control, and then I would sort of black out. And then next thing I know, I would be out in space looking down on Earth. And that was pretty common occurrence for me as a child, but I didn't have language around it. I didn't understand, and I just assumed that everyone else had those experiences too.
Mm.
um, and then it was sort of followed by I remember my dad had yeah, he had a lot of books about UFOs, and I was always really curious about them. And I remember going through one of the different types of grey aliens, and there
Mm,
was this image of the hybrid children, and I remember I just used to look at that image and just stare at it and just be mesmerized by how,
mm,
like, human-like she was, and how
mm,
childlike she was, and how beautiful she was. And
mm,
I just and then I think after coming into information around that, probably going to the age of maybe 6, 7, 5, 6, 7, I would always feel like I was being watched.
mm,
Um,
mhm,
I would always feel as though I was taken out of my window at nighttime.
mm,
I was a very proactive sleepwalker as a child. I would wake up sometimes in the neighbor's house. I would wake up outside. Um, I would wake up sometimes dripping wet, head to toe. Um, I would wake up and my room had been changed around. I would have odd objects in my bed.
mm,
Um, Not to mention sometimes waking up with scarring on my body. So
mm,
when I think back at it, I mean, we used to joke about it and, oh, Alicia always sleepwalks. But now I'm
mm,
like, wow, like that was just sort of like tapping into coming back into awareness. Who knows? I haven't regressed myself around that. I haven't felt the
mm,
do, but I was certainly very active as a child. And yeah, a lot of experiences and a lot of paranormal like, experiences growing up as well. Like,
mm,
just huge amount of paranormal activity, spirits, things flying, poltergeists. As a
mm.
child coming into my teenage years, I had a lot of influence around electronic devices. So I walk into a room and TV would switch off and on. Um, I would walk under street lights and they would switch off. So I remember this one instance, I was walking down the street, and as I walked under every single um, street light, it would go off. And then I got to my destination, which was just at the end of the street, it was like a milk bar, and look back and they'll all switch back on. And then I'd walk under them
Mm,
again and they would switch off. So I used to interfere and affect a lot of technology in that sense. So,
mm,
my upbringing wasn't very traditional or normal. And I chose well. I chose a family that would really nurture that experience so that it would prepare me for going through what I would go through in later
mm,
years. I truly see it as that. So,
mm.
can you relate? I mean, we're obviously
It's
talking
funny how
about
you can
early
choose two
years now.
ways.
Yeah.
I feel like it's funny how you see it going two ways. Like, I feel like I chose the opposite experience where my parents weren't able to be there and where no one was able to be in control of me. I think growing up as an only child, mum dying, dad was always at work, left home at a really young age, had issues with authority. Like, I really think that my experiences that I chose really facilitated me to be able to not listen to anyone and literally not give a flying anything about what someone else thinks or believes. So I feel like it strengthened me in a way where whatever I thought was just the truth and there's no one else. But also being said, I think it allowed me to experience enough things that now I can relate to lots of different people's experiences. I'm only 29, but I feel like I can relate to anyone. Like, all of my experiences now, I look back and it was just some like play,
Yeah.
something where I could just pretend that happened and then be like, okay, now I have that perspective and I have this perspective. Which reminds me, actually, remember, so a part of speaking again on galactics and being an antenna of information, I feel like synonymous to the hybrid was, I feel like I was also signed up to be a part of a data collection of the
Mm,
human experience. So when the mantid beings started to come in, I don't know if other people out there experience this, and it can be seen as hypervigilance through trauma and anxiety to always be watching. But it's like when my gifts turned on, I could scan the people around me, see their mood, see their thoughts, see their data. So when I'd walk down a street, I'd be so tired because I've just retrieved all of this data, and now I realized I was sending it back up about the human experience.
Yeah.
And actually with you, I decided to turn that off. So the man that would come through, he was just really like lab coat notes. And I decided to turn that off because it was too much. I'm sure now I do it in dream space in a less, but I wonder how many people are out there who are just so tired and don't even realize they're just like relaying facts.
100%. I mean, that's come through sessions that I've done numerous times with numerous people that, they're doing this data collection, and this information through their own experience, through what they're picking up in their environment, is then being relayed back onto the ships so that they can then look at the next sort of play in their playbook. This is what the human experience is like right now. How can we what's the word I'm looking for, counteract that with the cosmic energies that are coming in? That's how I've always seen
I
it.
see it also how to train the children. So like I have this really vivid memory of a ship, and it's like it's mostly to do with gray energy, this one particular ship that I have seen, but I feel like they are up there and just like watching, and they're super hyped to come down. But I feel like it's teaching them the protocol of like situations and how to play out. Because like sometimes I look at people in the street, there's this one man and stood out so much on the street, and I was driving and I was like, he's a hybrid. He's a full grown hybrid person. His face was giant. His eyes were giant. Pure, like hair does not come this color. And as I was sitting in my car watching him, he just goes and looks directly at me. And I was like, holy shit, he knows. And I know. And then he passed the corner and I drove to see him and he disappeared. And I was like, where did you go? So like, it's just interesting when you're open to it and that you're holding that frequency so other beings can see you in that same way.
Yeah, 100%. Oh my God, what an amazing story. And I think, I mean, let's talk about the bigger perspective of why people are in the hybridization program. What is the bigger purpose? And perhaps we'll go into that more into the session, but just for now, how do you, why is this happening? How do you see it from that bigger perspective? I
I
guess
have a
there's
few
multiple
different
agendas.
thoughts. Yeah, I feel like I'm always of the good agenda, but I feel like over time, because the Greys are master geneticists and they are so amazing at keeping their races alive, a part of me feels that the human, the traits of a human is so heart-centered and can feel the extreme range of emotions, and that is a driving force. The creativity, the love creates expansion. I feel like we perhaps are trading off on a giant level the intellect with our heart as a swap and a merge to keep an aspect of their race alive. I really believe that. Two, I think it's the time of disclosure. So I think that to be able to progress and start to warm people into the idea of the vastness of races, it's people are scared of the unknown. So if they see a little bit of the human in it, it's going to start to expand us into us star brothers and sisters. And New Earth, I think, as well. I think we're getting ready to be able to step into a space where we're able to be more like we all like Pleiadians are our cousins, and like Venusians, and I think that it's just natural. Like look at dogs. We took the wolf and now we have like a trillion types of dogs. We just love merging things.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because when you look at it from an earth level, I mean, look at the merging of genetics and hybridization of different
Of
animals.
fruits and oranges, lemons.
Mhm, mhm. And
How
when
do you see it?
yeah, and also when you look at these technologies such as, IVF and things like that, where does that technology come from? Obviously, I see it as a very watered down version of what a lot of our star brothers and sisters have access to on a technology level. But the way that I see it is, yeah, perfectly said. I think it is the integration of being able to rejoin with our cosmic brothers and sisters into becoming a more cosmic interplanetary society. And I think a lot of the disclosure that is coming out and has been coming out is to I want to say gently, but maybe it won't be so gently. We don't know, but to give people the information and understanding that our human history isn't what we've been told. And when you look back at a lot of the indigenous cultures around the world, they all talk about the Pleiadians and being, coming from the stars. And
Dolphins.
yeah, and it's written throughout, ancient texts throughout the beginning of time. And this is the stuff that has sort of been covered up for, you know, through different agendas. And now this information is coming to light. And it's just, I do see that the hybrid program is, there's various agendas, and there's various,
Yeah.
but ultimately I do see a time in Earth's history, in Earth's future,
Which is
where,
history.
which is history. It's all happening simultaneously, but we will be integrating some of these hybrid children into our society. And I do believe that women who are going through a journey similar to mine, and I won't say the same because I think everyone is very different, is the bridge and the gapping of, we can't go from what we have known to, you know, sperm and egg fertilization, conception of a child, 9 months, birth, to hybrid children integrating on the planet. There has to be a in between experience that women go through. Otherwise, it's too great a leap and jump. And I think one of the beautiful ways that I've learned to understand my own process was a lot through regression and hypnosis to be able to review my soul contracts, but also to review aspects of myself in other lifetimes on other planets and what my role was, and to see that role of what I was doing then is exactly the same as what I'm doing now, just on a different planet. And I think that gave me a lot of peace and a lot of acceptance of something that humanly or earthly feels so foreign and so way out there, to realize that that's just what my soul knows to do naturally and has done many, many times.
And does
And
with ease.
does with ease. And it's only our humanness that makes it weird or different or doesn't understand it. And I'll never forget that first, because I originally wanted to be regressed and have a hypnosis session because I wanted to understand the missing time. And I wanted to understand what was happening to me when I was being taken aboard craft, because I have a lot of screen memories. I don't have a lot of conscious memories. And
What's a screen memory for someone who doesn't know what a screen memory is?
So a screen memory isn't the actual memory of what is actually taking place. It's a technology used that will be given a different memory or inserted a different memory that would appear as having a dream. So you're not actually seeing or having privy to the actual experience of when you're being taken on board craft and having missing time. And screen memories, there's a lot of people that talk about this in great length and have a lot more expertise in it. But for me, a lot of my screen memories were more of New Earth and prophetic images. So I was being given, 'cause just to backtrack a bit, I know that a lot of screen memories people have images like owls and clowns, and like there's very distinct screen memories that happen, especially for people who are in some of the grey hybridization programs and some of the darker military programs that are non-terrestrial. And mine were actually always prophetic dreams of New Earth, and prophetic dreams of what would happen, and to give me context as to why I was experiencing this. And so I, in the beginning, I was feeling very violated. I was feeling very out of control,
Mm.
um, very misunderstood, even to myself.
Mm.
And I just wanted to understand what was happening to me in when I would wake up in the morning and know that something had happened, but
Mm.
not have any memory as to what went on. And I wanted to know where I was going and what was happening to my body. To be waking up having scars on my body is pretty
Yeah.
confronting, you know. Um, and so I didn't have any money at the time. It was that time. Just to give people context of from the human experience. After my conception, I went through a process of losing everything, friends, family, job. Um, Actually, that process had already begun and then continued. Um, and so I was kind of left up to my own device, sitting in a home, very cold home, through the middle of winter, just staring at a wall for hours on end, just trying to grapple with my new reality and what was
Yeah.
happening to me. And I didn't have any money. I didn't, it was like it was a struggle just to keep a roof over my head and food in my mouth, because I couldn't engage with society. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
mm. And I think that a big part of not being able to engage with society, take away all the human judgment and misunderstanding, my abilities and sensory had become so fine-tuned and heightened
Mm-hmm.
that, like you were describing before, I would go into a shopping center or a supermarket and I could read everyone's energy like a chart or a coding. And it was a
Mm.
to me like matrix coding, but like words. A bit like
Mm.
I would always describe it like the Terminator. And I would see a screen pop up beside the person, and like all their statistics was being shown to me. And it's
Mm.
incredibly exhausting
Yeah.
to be taking in that much information. I was
Mm.
My ability to merge with other people's feeling and experience and reading people's, um, highly telepathic. I always have been, but to be able to pick up on people's subconscious thoughts, and of course people in their confusion, friends and family, of not understanding what I was going through. And to be completely honest, I think I didn't understand what I was going through, and I was just trying to sift through it and make sense of it and share that with people as it was happening. But then I would be able to read their thoughts and feelings and disbelief, and it was merging with my consciousness, and it was making me doubt myself, because I
Mm.
would be conflicted to my own knowing and then merging with someone else's thoughts.
Mm.
And that I realized that process was only bringing me down further, and it was not conducive. And that's when I started to shut people out, because I needed to just be in my own energy space to get a grip, to get a handle on what was actually happening to me. And I can't remember the purpose of where was I going with that. Oh, regression. Okay, that was a long tangent, but at the time I didn't have any money, and being a regressionist myself for many years, I mean, you can put yourself under, but it's not the same thing. You have someone guide you under. So I taught one of my very close friends how to do regression and put me under, and he held that session for me. And straight away, instead of going to the time of the missed time, because at that time, even though I was aware that I was being taken physically on board craft, um, I didn't have a lot of memory, but I was also having a lot of people contact me at that time who were also on the same craft and who had seen me there. So I knew something greater was happening, and it was very validating to know
Mm.
that, but I wanted to actually see the experience of what was happening. And so I had this regression session done in, I think, uh, yeah, it was 2016. And instead of going to that, I was straight away taken to my time on Arcturus and the process of aligning and bringing through high vibrational children at the
Mm.
time of a dimensional shift.
Mm.
And when I saw that, I was like, oh my God, I looked at my body and I was like, my body looks the same. I've always thought and felt that I've had an awkward shaped body, especially stomach. It's something that I've been always very self-conscious of all my life, that I don't look like a normal human in that sense. It has
Mm.
an awkward shape to it, my belly button looks weird, and then when I was able to see my body in that form on Arcturus, I was like, that makes so much sense as to why my body has a quote unquote weird shape in this
Mhm.
human form. And I was able to see myself going through the pregnancy, certain scenarios around that is very similar in this life of um having absent partner and kind of being alone in that process, and also the aftermath of going through the dimensional shift and having those children come into form, and then my role of working with those children and their special gifts and abilities. And it put a lot of context around what I was experiencing, and it made me feel um not so crazy, yeah, to have that awareness. So it's I think there's a lot of power in a lot of those modalities that people can hold space for you through that to get a better context of your own experience.
For sure. If I went through all of what I've been through and I didn't see even like, I feel like I've seen maybe 5% of what actually goes on, like I am so much more confident to walk around the street and know who I am. And I think even though I had the similar experience through those years, like I lived in someone's basement and I just meditated all day and I didn't go out in public and I didn't see anyone and I lost all my friends, and it was like a year of just being alone, and then I had the dengue fever. I think like if I had not have had those experiences of reconnecting and meeting the I remember I met the Arcturian version of myself, and even though you only have 5 or 6 of those experiences, then the flow on effect it creates to understanding yourself deeper. It's like when you read your astrology chart and you're like, oh, that's so Scorpio of you, and then you're like, oh, that's why I am, because it's in this house. It's more that you can connect in with that and see, oh, okay, so I've done sound in Egypt. That brought back all of that knowledge. I've done blah, blah. It makes everything such a smoother transition, even though at the initial standpoint, it is really like cognitive dissonance. You can't make sense of it.
Yeah.
I think just having a handful of those experiences really helps to solidify your own knowledge of it, like know thyself, but like on a huge scale.
Yeah, massively, massively. And I think let's talk about the cognitive dissonance, because I mean, not
And
only
the trips to the hospital and the doctors trying to check you into the psych ward and you running away, stealing your keys and saying, I'm out of here. I had like so many instances of just horrifically dimensionally tearing apart alone, scary experiences, which still stay with me. I still have PTSD, the driving on the highway, and there's lots of knock on of the abruptness of the awakening that looks like dysfunction on a human level.
yeah,
It's crazy.
it really does. So, connection to your hybrids now. What is that process like for you?
So I think my connection, I feel like it's still ongoing and multi-layered. I think that on one level, I definitely see it's hard to understand what you see as where to place the boxes. So I spoke about those visions I was having. It was like I was in a room full with all of these hybrid kids, teaching them how to create platonic solids, like 3D structures of the sacred geometric forms that create worlds with sound. So I don't know if those kids are my that's where I get blurry. It's like, I don't know if you're my kids or if an aspect of me is teaching you, preparing you for something, because on a galactic level, I'm a whole nother being doing a whole nother thing. So I think right now I feel like an aspect of the birthing has stopped, because when I first connected with you, it was really intense and I felt like that was too much for me. And now I feel like I'm in another role of, I feel like most of it happened a long time ago. And I think that there's like, in the session yesterday, they were saying I birthed thousands of these beings, and for the dark agenda that they were being created for, some of them had to be discarded because they carried too much of a pure light quotient, that it was actually going in and ruining the plans that they had to, like, I think they cloned some of them out and sent them into those darker spaces. But I am not so tapped into that, because I think that relates to my earlier phase of coming into the womb in this life and the trauma there. And like you said, I haven't felt the need to go and uncover that right now, because I feel like really removed from that. But I definitely sense that there's a lot out there doing really, really different things. And I feel like more in sessions now, I see my womb being used as a space to create the energies of the new earth and to ground that. So I don't typically feel like I'm in a constant process of being used for anything. But I think if I were to feel into that, there's a whole range of creatures there to connect with. And when I think about them, I feel that there are a core essence of like 16 that I feel very, very, very connected to. And I'm sure if I look into that with my sexual trauma history and my relationship to sex, I think that I would find that there was foul play in a human level on that level. And that is probably why I haven't explored that. And I know that that is a symptom or a sign for lots of different people, that fear around that connection, and that I had felt the first half of my life very disconnected from my waist down. Like I didn't feel my feet. I was very ungrounded in that sense. But now I think as I integrate more and integrate more, I really do feel like my mission as a human level is to hold the knowledge on a galactic level and then integrate it either through my sound frequencies or through my really casualness of it, because I don't find it to be too far out. And I think that I'm able to connect with a range of different people and kind of meet people where they're at. I'd like to say I meet people where they're at. I think that maybe I'm a bit far out for some people and I forget that, but that's okay, because I think that I'm really casual about the whole thing, because I feel like I've done it before and again and again and again.
Yeah.
That it seems just like my purpose here to just be like, this is really normal and it's fine.
Yeah. And I really commend you and admire the way that you have your casualness of so many vast and varied experiences and the gifts that you bring through. I mean, your music and what you channel through you really is a transportation into other consciousness, and it brings that, floods it onto the planet, and you really are in your highest level of service. And I think that that is the ultimate of what I see for many, to be able to embody that and take those experiences and do something really beautiful with it, that brings those gifts and skills online and shares that in some capacity.
And that's why I love creating transmissions with you. I really feel like there's a new wave of people like Dolores Cannon, the three waves. There's the older generation who are here to really be riled up and fight against the fact that they were lied to and sold this story. And they're out there doing the work, going to the rallies. And then there's another generation who are kind of like playing out their own role and awakening really slowly. And then there's the new generation who are like, I feel like I came in online really fast and I don't need to fight anyone, because I just want to make the portal to reconnect through really undercover, subtle, cheeky means, where it's almost like the I was born April 1st, so that's April Fool's Day, the joke of it, you know. And I think through sound, it is really the language that everyone, it's not frightening, but I think that when the most common aspect is like, I played the music for my clients and they just went straight out. So I think my real role is to be able to bridge people between the two. Like I was having those visions of when the time came, I was in Sedona and I was in these like hexagonal domes and it was gold and people were walking in and they'd lay down and I'd play a sound bath and a portal would open and it was this rainbow bridge and the beings who could hold enough light and were ready through the sound were being transported through the sound waves to come out through the other side. And I remember being like, I've always said my music that I believe sound to be a transportational tool and that it covers every aspect of human functioning. It's physical, you can change your DNA, cellular, molecular structures, but yeah, transporting your psyche is just so exciting to me. And I remember being really upset. I think I told you how there was a level of human that weren't ready and weren't able and couldn't make it, and the sadness that I felt on the human level that they couldn't make it and that they couldn't come, I think. But that being said, like on the grander level, it's fine.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's, to put it into perspective, why we go through these experiences, these journeys, is ultimately on that collective level as we, ascend into a new earth, a new vibrational frequency. And it takes a strong soul to come into human form and to go through this process that we're all doing in our own unique ways. So I always like to bring it back to, why are we doing this and the greater picture of it, and then the human injustices seem to sort of melt away. It doesn't mean that they're not valid. They absolutely are, but they really take us and carry us to where we need to be. So I think we might just touch on just quickly the vast different types of experiences that women could go through in birthing a new world. Obviously, we've touched on hybrid, but I see so many, and I have so many women contact me on a daily basis, wanting to know what's happening with their body, what is their experience, will they give birth physically, is it,
Yeah.
are they going to have they given birth, are they involved in hybrid programs? And I always say, I don't know unless I go into a session. Like I don't, and sometimes even then it's not always, the information's not always given because it's an unfolding process and we're not given everything at the same time. But maybe we can touch on, what are the different experiences in the broader spectrum, and what that looks like from a multi-dimensional level and what that is like embedded in the human experience.
I think the first thing is literally what you research and spend your time fixated on or have your interests in. I truly think back to how passionate I was and just so curious about it. I think if you're researching this all the time and you think about it and you wonder and you like, it sparks a feeling inside of you. That's like, not saying that that's always it, but for me, I look back, I'm like, oh, I didn't research that because like it resonated with me, if I wasn't a part of it, I'd be like, I don't care about this, just as I don't care about sport or whatever. Like,
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think it's sometimes like going back and looking at your journey. I know for me, I had a recurring dream for 10 years that I was doing normal everyday things, like I was at work or I was at school, and then the next thing I would look down and I would be about 3 or 4 months pregnant, and I didn't know how it happened. And quite distressed, I would go home and tell my parents that I'm pregnant, and they would ask me who the father is, and I would say, I don't know how this happened. And then them getting really upset because I was lying to them. I think I started having these dreams when I was about 14 to about 24. And then I
wow.
truly believe that was when the energetic process really started to begin for me. When I look back, I realized that I would go through massive expansions of looking quite pregnant, and then it would dissipate. And so I worked on like balancing my diet and, going through all the physical aspects of like, diet, nutrition, exercise. But I realized that I look back now and I'm like, they were massive surges of energy and I was holding frequency. And I see that in women now, that we are being prepared to hold the frequency of these children for a very long time, even before way before the time of conception, however that takes place. So, I've known, in a variety of different ways. Obviously, there's the hybrid, and I think that there's 22 or more different types of agendered hybrid programs of different galactic origins, probably more than that. Um, and so that from a human experience is that women will have very intense dreams of being up on ship, but actually go through the process of becoming pregnant. And then generally the baby is taken out of their womb at about 4 months. And so that can be ongoing for many years, or it can come in a form of miscarriages as well. Um, um, for me, from my experience, when I look back, I was guided to go to many sacred sites that embodied, the divine feminine codes, which I had no idea at the time. It was a process that happened over, 10 years, where I would go, I'd been multiple times to the temple of Isis in Egypt, and spent a lot of time in Egypt. Places
Classic.
places, and it was funny because at the beginning of this journey, every time I did an energy session, Isis was appearing, and I just assumed that it was for the client. But she would appear to me, and I was like, oh wow, Isis, okay, yeah, cool, not realizing that it was actually a part of like messaging and connection for me, quite oblivious to a lot of things until hindsight. But what I think is probably the most incredible was that exactly 5 years to the day, I was in the old city. I was in Jerusalem. I ended up in Bethlehem. I was there on Orthodox Christmas, and there were special celebrations happening. Like I do when I go to sacred sites, I find myself going into a trance-like state, and I sort of, it's like something comes over me and I start to wander, and I go to wherever I need to go, and it's not really a conscious process. Found myself down at the star where allegedly Jesus was born. Until I got yelled at and told to get out by the priest, who weren't happy about me being in there. And I, spend some time there, and that was not even on my radar. It was not even in my interest, but I found myself there through a series of synchronistic events. And I often look back at that being a key pivotal marker, because it was exactly 5 years to the day of having that experience that I conceived. And a lot of the imagery and the context that was given to me was around Mary and Immaculate Conception. And I realized that that had been with me my whole life. Like the word Immaculate Conception was always sparked a curiosity, and almost like a humor of like, really? Like, is that real kind of thing? But I never explored it more than that. I was never brought up in a religious upbringing at all. And I look back now and I see how things were like planted along the way. And yeah, so exactly 5 years to that experience that I had in Bethlehem, I conceived, and through interdimensional conception. So to give context to people of what that means, it means a merging between two souls on a higher dimensional realm, that then is a process of physical embodiment. So to conceive children in the higher realms, so not with physical, but it creates a portal of light for these souls to come in, and for me to hold the frequency and also the physical manifestation of the children that wish to be birthed through me, is a much more in-depth process than a 9-month gestation period, because it aligns with my ascension process and my ability to hold more light frequency. So it's been an immense amount of shedding of the old self, of, behaviors, consciousness, patterns, ancestral clearing, in a very kind of rapid way. And I see a lot of women on this journey, and it always happens in a very similar way, through a soul connection and emerging. And often it's not happened through a physical means of intercourse. And then our bodies start to present and show the signs and symptoms of pregnancy, that
But it doesn't
goes.
show up on the machinery because they're too high frequency to be witnessed by, and they don't want to be seen. So then you feel a bit crazy. Yeah.
And I think it's really trusting in knowing your own intuition and what your body is going through. No one else can tell you what you are or aren't going through. And I think, trying to merge with the medical realm is quite damaging for women who are on this path, because there's a lot of, there's a lot of taboo, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of unconsciousness in this. And I think that I've learned to understand that it used to really hurt me. On a human level, it really used to bring me down and hurt me that the people that I love the most couldn't support me in the way that I felt that I needed that support. And I think I see it very differently now, in the sense that I can't blame them, or I can't be upset with them. They simply just don't have the level of consciousness to understand it. And even if people do, without going through it, you really can't explain it to anyone. It's one of those things that you have to go through an experience, or a experience, to be able to fully comprehend. And so it can be very
It's a big
lonely,
job.
very lonely and
You have to
isolating.
hold the space. Yeah, I feel like you have to hold the space of being the human going through the experience. And also, when you create cognitive dissonance in your friends and your family, you have to hold space and be the bigger person to say, okay, I won't be upset with the medical system, you just don't know. Or like your friends and family, if they're judging you, it's a big role to not, you want to just crash and fall into their arms and say, oh my God, what am I going through? But you still have to be strong enough to hold that and be like, you're not there, that's totally fine, and keep that really open, loving space. That would be very hard.
Yeah. And going back to the medical, because a lot of people come to me, I get so many questions, so many different questions, and I don't claim to know all the answers. I'm learning them as I go on along through my own process, and also through the experience of other women and being able to work with other women. But my understanding of the not being able to be shown on medical, things like scans or blood tests and things like that. I understand that it's in a different frequency. So this technology isn't able to pick up the frequency of those children, or they don't, as you said, they don't necessarily want to be seen. And it's the same. I try and relay it to the same. If you, there's a book that talks about a lot of the masters and the sages and the gurus in India. And they used to talk about how a lot of these sages would never appear in photographs because their frequency was out of the dimensional space. And for them to be able to be seen in a photograph, someone to take a photograph of them to actually be seen, they would have to really focus to bring their physical energy and body into a more denser physicality to actually be shown on a photograph. So that's the way that I see it and as another example, and I find that a lot of this is much more commonly accepted throughout the East than it is through the West. There's so many different stories of women, falling pregnant through miraculous ways and having these children all throughout, Eastern, society. That's not so uncommon. And the more I speak to women, the more we open up these conversations, the most incredible stories come through, and I think that, as one woman said to me, this is so much more common than people would ever imagine.
And the hybrids too, when I heard the percentage and the channeling of like, how many are there? And it was like 4%. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. It's a huge amount of people going through these experiences. And I think one of the biggest things that I really want to bring is awareness and openness, and to give women who are going through it a easier, more accepted time than what I went through,
Yeah.
and have that support system. Sorry. Oh, throat chakra. So I guess other experiences that women can have is that a lot of women do give birth astrally and don't give birth to a physical child, but they are, that's another aspect of it. And then there's another aspect of women who are actually birthing new earth energies onto the planet. So they will go through feeling physically pregnant and then sort of go through a process of birthing energies. And so it's very multidimensional, and every path is uniquely different. And it comes down to trusting and knowing what your own higher self is guiding you. And for me, it's through my dreams. I've always had prophetic dreams. So, and often my kids do talk to me and contact me through my dream space. I still to this day get taken up on board craft and I don't see myself as specifically in a hybrid program, although it can be viewed like that. Mine was very much a high dimensional energy merge with a soul resonance. It's very similar to mine. And that person resides on Earth. Who's not, there's galactic aspects of that person, but they have a physical body and a physical incarnation. And yes, my children do look very human, but and I've always been told the importance about it is the genetics. It's the genetics that I hold on a human level. I have a very interesting genealogy in my heritage, as I know you do too. It's very mixed. And also, in terms of, I guess one thing that we haven't touched on is the science of telegony and how this is a process that women do hold the genetics of their sexual partners, and that's a whole other topic. But it really it comes down to genetics. At the end of it, it comes down to the refining of the new human through genetics, and however that whether that happens in a petri dish or through interdimensional process. It's about the evolution of the human race and the new galactic human that has been coming through various generations. So, well, I think we should go into a bit of a guided journey, because as we've stated, so many people, not just women, but men, go through this process of being parents to either hybrid children or children that are coming through in various different ways. So I thought it'd be really cool to do a guided process for people who are on this call and want to join in, to be able to connect into the frequency of connecting with perhaps the soul of their children. And this can be through hybrid programs. This can be through unborn children. This could be the soul or higher self of your already existing child who wishes to communicate to you on a higher level, or you could purely be a custodian or, a caregiver in some way for new earth children. So however that applies to you, come with us, journey with us, and we're going to go into a bit of a process. So just tuning in. So we've just opened up the space, set the intention to connect with information, guidance, visuals, and experiences connected with new earth children, higher consciousness, new earth, and hybrid children, and the future of humanity. So the first thing that I'm opening up to, first thing that I'm seeing is 3 strands of energy strands that are actually coming from my womb, moving. They're kind of, it's beautiful. It's almost like they're DNA strands, but it's 3 strands that are intertwining together that run up through my body and they go out through my crown. And as they move up, they split or separate. One goes right, one goes left, and one goes directly up. So the sense that I get is one each represents a child, and one is a direct link into my higher or highest aspects into source. And it's like they're showing me, or the sense that I'm getting is that the feeling of the different soul origins of my children and mine, and how they come together and fuse together. And that is a massive process through the ascension path of higher vibrational children. In it is a fusion of energies that have to be melded together to come together. And it is a fusion and melding of the DNA strands to be able to hold frequency in a vessel, to be able to birth into physicality, into the world. And that's the first message that's coming through, and how important that process is in working that energy and being able to connect with it, because each has a very separate origin and unique signature in its vibration, but how it comes together to form into physicality. And it starts as a light spectrum, as a color, as an energy, as a frequency, as a sound. And as it comes together, the descension process into physicality is really important, and it's vast and varied for many women on this journey. Oof, okay. It's like showing me the stages as it moves through my body, almost descending through into my chakras to come into the womb and then ground into, it's almost like the base of the spine, and then like the birthing process can begin as the descension of those energies come into form, and how important there's just like a real focus and emphasis on the importance of that. And this is being shared widely for other women to help them better understand the process that they may be going through or may go through in years to come, as this is going to be much more widely accepted, is what I'm being told. This is going to be much more widely accepted and understood as a process that will become a new normal as we move into new earth paradigm. I'm also being shown how it is a portal, that through this process that they are creating this portal as an opening into the new earth reality, and how that is shared through like a ripple effect through the mother that opens this portal, but it's opening these little portals over the planet. So through each woman who goes through higher vibrational pregnancy in any context of that word or journey, ultimately what it's doing is creating mini portals of light, which are opening access to new earth frequencies and the new reality that is being birthed with this process, in conjunction with Gaia herself. I've never seen this before, but just as you said that, I've just tapped into, it must be on the ships now. Yeah, it's definitely on the ships. And I can see a range of beings that are almost standing in a V-shaped like one stands at the forefront, and then there's others that are of a similar role, a similar race, or same race, but work in conjunction with one another. They definitely, to me, appear to be Arcturian. And there's one at the head, and then they sort of move back in that V shape, and it goes back far as the eye can see. And each of them seem to be like a midwife, like holding these children. Some have more physical form, some are just more energetic. There's just a line.
It's going crazy. It's like
The one at the front, she's just saying to me, we are ready, they are ready. Time is coming to allow these beautiful beings to be birthed upon the planet. This will really help with the acceleration of the ascension process for all humanity. And this was always designed in that way through the children. It's through the children that brings the joy, the love, the laughter, the essence of the eternal soul. And that's what helps through these children being birthed into the world, helps people to reconnect with that essence, and that ripple effect has more impact than anything that we could possibly imagine. We're being set up for a time of where we're entering into new space, new earth realities that will be an environment for these children not only to be born and survive, but also to thrive. We've been testing this out for many years, for many hundreds of years on earth, and we've gone through many phases and processes of being able to work with different aspects of DNA to fuse together to really bring in beings that will be able to work in the highest light in a denser energy. Some of these projects and programs haven't been successful, and there's all different fractions, but we are a fraction that works with the light and humanity's best interest to support the healing and the change. These children are already embedded, encoded in the change that represents a new reality for everyone. The energy is so intensely just like so pure in radiance, and it's just like this magenta-y pink energy.
I feel so much excitement from the actual kids. Like I feel like different age ranges and everything, and I feel like I feel like there's like some of the medics. I feel like they're jumping down. They're like, we are ready. We're ready. We're ready. They are so freaking. I really get the sense that when they come down, that they know they are like almost teaching. Like they have so much compassion for us, and I really feel like they are the leaders. And really, like when your mom and dad separate and you marry someone else, and you have a half brother, a half sister, it's like they're half. It's like they are our family. They are our family, and their joy is to share with us, and like it's not hierarchy, it's equality, but it's based and rooted in joy.
I'm just tapping into a scene now. I kind of was asked to be shown something that's in real time now, and it's like I'm outside the planet, like suspended in space, looking back at Earth from a wider perspective. I can see that there's a whole congregation of like different, like interdimensional, interplanetary ships that are hovering in and around Earth's atmosphere. But what is most prevalent is like this circle that is being like a web that's being created through the energy of the souls that are preparing to come in and to be birthed into the world. And it's almost like they create a chain, a circle chain of light that surrounds the planet. And it's sort of morphing from Earth to like an egg, like a fertile egg. And it's like as they create that, they all have a different, like very specific fusion, a frequency, energetic signature, but how it joins and connects together to create like a harmonic resonance of new earth energies. And like as they're joining and banding together, this energy is sort of like pushing, impacting, pushing in on earth. And it's like infiltrating light into it, and as that, like bit by bit, it's sort of pressing in these, like to me it looks like very like multi rainbow colored, but it's very translucent, sort of pearlesque. And then it's like one kind of shoots in into the center, which I believe it represents coming through the birth canal. And then one is like the catalyst for the many to like almost like jump and move down through these like energetic streams of light, which I believe represent coming, their energy coming in and being birthed, and then coming as they come out through the birth canal of the mother, one by one. There's this like catalyst of like sparks of light and energy that's, then it ripples, and then there's like this wave of light that envelops the planet and holds it in this new vibrational sphere. Wow. All I'm taking in now as we conclude is just there's so much excitement and joy and love and feelings that I don't believe yet can be translated into human experience or words or language. But it can be felt and it can be tapped into, and that potential is already there for everyone. Okay, so we're just going to take just a few moments just to take a couple of deep breaths. Just inhale and exhale, allowing the breath to support our body, support the energy flow as it moves in and around our field, as we slowly start to sink in to that greater aspect of self, to reconnect inward. Finding stillness and calm in the breath. And what we're going to do is we're just going to clear our energy space to prepare for this connection.
So just visualizing a pink and white light moving through our energy field, and as it does, it clears away any debris, any stagnant energy forms, just to really get a clear connection in, just spinning that energy in and around us. We can expand it out a little bit further into our room, into our space, just setting up that really beautiful, loving, nurturing, connective space. And just with each breath, bringing more light and energy into our body, into our energy field, and into our space. As we start to connect inward, bringing our focus and awareness into the heart space. Feeling the rise and fall of the breath. Feeling the intelligence of the heart that connects into the soul, into the memory, and into the infinite knowing. As we sit into that space, we now open up and invite and call in the energy of our children, child or children. Allowing this direct heart-to-heart cohesion to connect us as we invite them into our heart and into our space. As we connect in, just allowing ourselves to be in their presence. Feel their energy, feel their vibrational frequency. Just notice how that feels, what sensations run through your body, what sort of emotions that sparks. As we just sit with the heart connection and feeling. connection from the heart into a knowing, into a dialogue, and being able to open up the channel to connect telepathically into dialogue to give the children a voice to be heard, to be understood, to be known at a deeper level. And open up the possibility for them to share and communicate with you what's most important for you to know right now. Perhaps their energies want to come in a little closer and merge in with yours. Establishing a stronger connection on a regular basis. Their connection and telepathy may be in thoughts or pictures, feelings or sensations. Just allow what's most important to come through right now. Perhaps you want to ask them questions. Allow yourself to follow the curious mind in asking any specific questions that feel relevant for you to understand at a greater depth how you can best support yourself and them through this connection. Perhaps the purpose or origins. What do they need most to help come into this world or be the best version of themselves in this world? Just taking a few more moments now before it's time to come back. Thanking them for connecting as they thank you for allowing them to have space in your heart and to have a voice. Knowing and sensing and feeling their presence, and knowing that they are deeply connected to you always, as you gently and slowly start to allow yourself to come back. Just taking a couple of deep breaths as you start to feel into your physical surroundings. Breathing in and out, taking your time, and whenever you're ready, you can come back and open your eyes.